because there's honestly so much wisdom and insight that some of these mentors are giving me that I'm just not able to write it all down. So I make sure that I record everything and then go back through it again afterwards.
Power to Live More with Joe Dodds.
Welcome to the Power to Live More podcast, all about productivity, organisation, well-being, energy and resilience. I'm Jo Dodds, and I started this show to enable interesting people to share their stories about how they use their power to live more, and by that I mean to do the stuff that they want to do more than the stuff that they need to or should do. It's about creating a life for yourself where you have the energy, health and space to be happy and fulfilled, spending your time as you'd like, whether that be at work, home or somewhere else entirely. That's your choice.
Hello. My name is Ellie and I'm co-presenter, and today Joe's interviewing Ben Smith of Captain's Coach. Ben was recommended to us by Stephen Mays, who was on podcast number 97 a couple of weeks ago, and a great guest he was. Joe says she is enjoying the interviews even more now we've changed the format a little. Hope you agree. Do let us know either way. You can email joe@powertolivemore.com. Ben Smith is the founder and CEO of leadership and high-performance coaching business for top athletes called Captain's Coach. He's also a psychological warfare officer in the Army Reserves and serves as a detachment commander. He also successfully created and ran a real estate flipping business during his time on active duty. He is a sports fanatic. He was named the MVP of a rugby national championship and was part of the 2016 All-Army national rugby team as well. He graduated and received his MBA in 2017. He is currently focused on creating a technology platform to improve the experience for team captains and leaders of sports teams as part of the Captain's Coach. He spends a lot of time working one-on-one with top high school and college athletes to get them to better understand and implement leadership on their teams. He also works as a consultant for athletic programs, businesses and middle managers. Back to the studio.
Today I'm interviewing Ben Smith of Captain's Coach. Ben's another of our guests from over the pond, and really pleased to have you with me today, Ben.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Joe. I'm excited to talk with you about everything.
Lovely. So start by telling us a bit about who you are, what you do and where you do it.
Yeah, certainly. Right now I'm in Virginia, down here in Prince George, and I founded a company last year called Captain's Coach, which is essentially leadership development for athletes. So I spent a lot of time working with local universities, private high schools, putting on leadership academies for them and doing one-on-one services, coaching, athletes ages 16 to 24, 22 in the high school and college kind of age.
Yep. Lovely. And so tell us a bit about how you got into doing that, because it's not the only thing you do, is it?
It's not, yeah. So I was active duty, been active duty the last 4 years, but ended up switching over to become a psychological warfare officer in the Army Reserves. And but while I was in active duty, I did a lot of coaching and kind of came across some issues that I saw within the sports industry, and just something that I felt really passionate about, which was really trying to figure out how we can better leverage sports to create the next generation of leaders. And one of the problems is that for most athletes, over here at least, is that they're put into leadership roles on their teams and they don't really know what to do. Most coaches don't take the time to systematically develop them, explain and define what leadership even is at all. And so we really are. I really felt passionate about that. I felt like there's nothing that athletes are more engaged in, than sports, and that we had better ways to leverage this opportunity that they had. So I started. I left active duty to kind of pursue this full time, and so I'm waking up and doing what I love every single day. So it's been a good last 11, 12 months now that I've been doing full time.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing you were an athlete at college yourself, were you?
Yeah, I was. So I played in high school. I wrestled, played varsity baseball, football, won a national championship, was the MVP of a rugby national championship in college, and was selected to play on a national Army team. while I was active duty, I got pulled up to and got paid to play with them in a couple tournaments. So that was really cool. Definitely, I've been playing sports my entire life. I absolutely love them and still play, pick up sports in adult leagues to this day.
Mm-hmm. So tell us more about why you do what you do, because I think there's a lot of people who sort of go out wanting to do whatever, the things that they enjoy, and we all want to do more of the things that we enjoy, but quite often we end up sort of squeezed into a box of doing a job that needs to be done, or we assume that we can't do the things that we really enjoy, and quite often people end up doing that much later in life when they finally realize that life's too short to not to do those things. But it sounds like you sort of probably had the opportunity to do more of what you loved by finding a job that let you do that, but now you've actually come really fully into it. So tell us more about why you do what you do.
Yeah, certainly. I'll give you a quick elevator speech, and I'll give you maybe a quick story that might help bring everything full circle. But again, kind of how I mentioned in the beginning, I just really feel passionate about sports, and I feel passionate about leadership. It's something that I've been kind of studying and researching. I went into the military to kind of experience what that was, and then improving that skill set even more. And so, I just feel strongly that sports is a great way for us to build the next generation of leaders. And so our mission is to empower leaders, team captains, current or aspiring ones in teams to lead their teams more effectively, and then enable coaches to systematically develop them. And, going back to, why I'm passionate about it is when I was a senior in high school, I was on a baseball team, and we were basically the number one team in the whole state. And I was essentially named the team captain. And no one ever really told me what I was supposed to do. No one ever talked to me about what leadership was, how it was defined, or what I was supposed to do on a day-to-day basis. And so our team was, we had a lot of talent, 13 Division I athletes on our team, which is unheard of for a public school system. And we went the first half of the season, was undefeated, and then all of a sudden we came to the second half of the season and just started completely failing. We started losing some games, and we were a really tight-knit group, and we were willing to do kind of whatever it took to win, and it just wasn't happening for us. And we ended up losing. We got second in the district, second in the regions, and lost in the state. So with all of this talent that we had on this team, we just weren't able to kind of pull it through. And I really look back now, and I really just wish that I knew then what I know now. And I think that if I had somebody that was there to kind of help coach me and tell me what it was that I was, or not tell me, but at least, provide some sort of a blueprint or structure as to some things that I could be doing, that whole experience would have been so much better. And then I'd be a better person, for it. And so it's interesting because I do a lot of research on my end to, be an expert in this field. And a lot of research is pointing to the fact that it's the team captain that is the driving force behind the team, not necessarily the coach, the strategies, the tactics, or the resources. And so it's funny because I have my own podcast. We bring in all of these great top tiered coaches and current captains, and they all say the same thing, is the fact that every championship team that they've been a part of, they've had a great team captain. And so just from a performance standpoint, it's really interesting that it's not necessarily the person at the top, like the coach, who necessarily has the most influence on the team. It's actually the player. And, whoever is the most influential player on the team has, a lot of research is pointing to the fact that's correlating to more wins and losses. So, the performance industries, over here in America, at least, it's $9 billion a year. A lot of parents and people are paying for all the X's and O's and the skill sets that really are only going to allow them to develop a skill set that they're going to have for a couple years, but we're not leveraging something like leadership, which is going to be a life skill for the next 70 years of their life, to help be a better father, mother, the next CEO, so I feel strongly about it. I obviously have some personal stories there. And so that's essentially, why I do what I do. Just very passionate about this and feel like this is the best way for us to make the world a better place.
Yeah, it's interesting. Absolutely, sort of that all makes sense, and yet, it's similar over in the UK. I mean, I think back,
hundreds of years ago when I was at school. When I was very young, so I was only, I don't know, probably 10, 11, I was the captain of the netball team. And I remember the teacher just saying to me, Joe, if you don't shout at people when you're on the court, then you're going to stop being the captain. I'm going to give it to someone else. And that was probably the strength of my leadership training in terms of that situation.
Well, yeah, at least somebody told you something though. But yeah, that's too funny. It's interesting too with the athletes that I work with. A lot of them, that's what they think. They think leadership is just being the one that's the loudest, that's like in control of everything, commanding and directing, and that's not what it is. No. But a lot of these young athletes see that in movies or whatever it might be. So, one of the things I have to do is just redefine what leadership is, because they've never even had it defined for them. So that's funny that that your coach said that to you.
Yeah, but also I guess again thinking about my daughter Ellie, who is the person who does the intros on the show. She now plays netball, and she captains one of her teams, and that I think is just because they need someone to go and do the toss and decide who's got the centre pass. And again, she's only 12, and there's time to develop yet and all that sort of thing. But I imagine the coaches must pick people because they've identified something. And Ellie is quite a personable person with empathy and quite enthusiastic and encouraging and confident and all that sort of stuff. So I would pick her if I was them, but obviously I'm her mum as well. but there's not, and I've not seen it so far, she's still young, but there isn't that connection then between, well, you're in this position and this is what you need to do, or this is why you're doing it, or this is the importance of it. And I guess it must come in as they get older to a certain degree naturally, but as you say, that whole formalization of what it means and seeing it as a leadership role is probably quite different. I don't think there's people doing what you're doing over here particularly.
Yeah, no, this is very niche. There is a little bit of a market over here. There's been a couple people that have started developing different resources to help this space. There's been people that have created team captain manuals and that do leadership academies and create like these exercises, which are really good. Because most of the time we don't learn what leadership is just through somebody lecturing us. It's something that we have to do, and it's an experiences that actually fully develop us. And so it's interesting too that you mentioned that your daughter was given the simple task of like doing the coin flip or whatnot, and that's at a young age, that's good. But as we move forward in high school and college, like that's all it continues to be, is just four captains selected to do the coin toss in the middle. And the captaincy role should be so much more than that. They should be given opportunities and experiences, and the coaches should be creating intentional experiences where they can really do things as captain, you know what I mean, and provide a systematic approach to it. So things like doing an AAR after practice, or allowing some of the team captains to put on a full meeting for the team and to figure out and problem solve issues that are happening within the team, or they should be having meetings. All these, there's so many different actions that they should be doing, more so than just flipping the coin. The captain's role can be so much more than that. So
and also how much press, both good and bad, do captains get in the sports at adult level? And again, I'm not sure if I think about our UK football captains or cricket captains or whatever, how much training they get either in the end, because as you say, the focus is around the managers and the coaches, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And it's interesting too, because research is pointing to the fact that the captain's the most important, the most pivotal position out of all of it. And so the issue is that as a strategist and a coach, what you're trying to do is limit the amount that luck plays in the outcome. And so when you don't do any kind of leadership development or training, then that's not a part of your culture. Basically what coaches are saying was, well, I hope that we have a great team captain this year, and so, what they need to start, and what we all should be doing, not just for the things that, just for life, but just for on a performance standpoint, if you want to have a great team captain, it's something that you have to develop over years and years. And so as they become, as they're ninth and, they're freshmen in your program, that's when it starts, so that, they have an idea as to what they should be doing, what leadership is, what it looks like, what their expectations are, what their duties and responsibilities are, once they become juniors or seniors or whenever it is, so that you can really create this competitive advantage over your opponents, which is what it's all about.
Mm-hmm. So talk us through what a sort of day looks like for you now, because again, having gone from working within the military and now working on your own for the last few months, things must have changed quite considerably.
They changed drastically. So now instead of waking up at 4:35 a.m., now it's I wake up around 7. I always get my 7 to 8 hours of sleep every night, which is definitely a big change from the military too. So I 7, and then I'll basically I do a lot of writing. I'm working on books. I just had a book that I wrote for team captains here recently. I just published, and so just writing every day, probably the first couple hours, and then just moving into working with whichever teams that I'm working with. I'll meet with a couple of like the team captains council for a university over video conferencing, and then I'll work out, and I'm here at home, so I get to I've got a 10-month-old baby, and so that's great to be able to be here and watch him grow. And then just I normally work from about 8 a.m. till about 8 or 9 p.m. too, so I get to sleep in a little bit later, but I'm working for most of the day. But
so as somebody who's been in a really rigid environment and now being in a could be more flexible environment, how's that transition gone? I mean, you sound way ahead of where I was when I first started my business. I started my business being much more sort of work structured, as in I just swapped my office life into my business, and now I do things differently to suit me, and but it's taken me a while to work that out. You sound like you've had quite a quick transition.
Definitely has been quick, and I think that the experience that I've had in the military with just the amount of planning and organization and some of those skills that I've learned have definitely suited me well to just kind of easily translate that over into this. It's definitely more flexible, but with the 10, 11, 12 hours that I work, I'm definitely still systematically approaching work, in a similar way. So I've definitely am pretty rigid with the habits and the just the battle rhythm that I create on a day-to-day basis. Utilizing, I kind of have a Google form that I usually set up, and the night before I'll always make sure that every hour block is filled in with exactly the priorities for the day, and make sure I'm accomplishing the things that I need to accomplish.
Yeah. I love that phrase, battle rhythm. I think I might have to use that one.
That's a military term, yeah. So just the rhythm throughout the day, what we're doing, and on a consistent basis, making sure that our habits and rhythms are something that are leading us to victory.
And I love the fact that you made it all sound quite flexible at the beginning, and then you just told me you've got to schedule hour by hour.
It is flexible, but again, I still do. I mean, there's definitely habits and a rhythm, or else I would never be able to, achieve anything. No, for the most part.
So talk about the sort of tools or apps or things you use. You just talked about a Google. Did you say Google?
I'm definitely old school. I love pen and paper, and I actually just bought a big whiteboard. It's like 6 by 8 feet, so it's here on the wall. So what I'll normally do is, write down, what I need to do for the day, and then transfer that to the whiteboard and kind of analyze and approach that in a different way. It just helps me to process things, and then I'll put it all into this Google form. So I love Google Suite, Google Sheets, Google Docs, and there's not like the Excel aspect for Google and Slides. But I also we utilize Adobe Suite. So like on the creative side for some of the videos and stuff that we have to create, Final Cut Pro for the books that I'm writing. I've really liked the tool Scrivener. If you've never heard of that, I think that's a really good application and tool that I use. And then with our podcasts and things, we utilize Zoom a lot too, which we really like. And we're also I'm part of an incubator here in Virginia called Startup Virginia. And so I've actually been meeting with a lot of mentors, which has been really cool. And I utilize voice memos a lot, trying to record conversations. And then because there's honestly so much wisdom and insight that some of these mentors are giving me that I'm just not able to write it all down. So I I make sure that I record everything and then go back through it again afterwards.
Yeah. It's interesting you say, you said at the beginning about paper and pen and the whiteboard. I was at a digital event last night speaking, and it was interesting. I asked people, what their favourite tool was sort of in the room, and pretty much 80 or 90% of people in the room said pen and paper. And this was a whole bunch of digital specialists.
Yeah, no, isn't that funny? Yeah, it's just the way that I process things. I've really tried. For about a year, I really tried to do everything on just the Google Docs, and I'm still a list guy, so just doing it. But I just really just keep going back to the pen and paper, and just a way for me to process. I'm not sure why that is, but my dad's the same way, so maybe that's why.
Yeah. And tell us a bit more about Scrivener. I think it has been talked about on the podcast once or twice.
Good. Yeah, it's really good for me. I did a lot of my writing on Google Docs, and I was trying to, each chapter was a different Google Doc, and it was just hard for me with how large the book was and how many chapters there was to really, just visualize everything and keep it all organized. So I found Scrivener. I think it was only like $50, and I've really liked that a lot. I can organize everything more effectively, and I can see the chapters there on the left, and it's helped me just visualize and organize things a little bit better on the end. Yeah,
so good for writing, not just books, but for even blogging. Some people use it for that.
Absolutely. Yeah, certainly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, lovely. Okay, so what about let's talk a bit about learning and improving, because you sound quite structured, and you've sort of packed quite a lot into your career so far. And obviously your focus is learning for other people. So what do you do in terms of your own learning? And you've talked about mentoring already, which I think is a great one to highlight how important it is to talk to people who.
The best thing that I've found to improve myself just over the last year is, you can't do it all by yourself. And so I've really found that out to be the case. And so for me to learn, mentoring has been huge. I started a real estate business too. I found a mentor, a buddy named Chris, and I would have never been able to accomplish what I did in that, and with the real estate stuff, had it not been for somebody that was there next to me, teaching me along the way. Certainly mentoring. We talk about, I haven't mentioned it here, but I'm sure your listeners have heard of the Pareto's principle, and so finding ways to learn more effectively. But mentors, people that have been there before, has certainly been the best way that I've found to really learn. Same thing with mastermind groups, getting around a lot of other people too. So probably the next best step. And so what I've also learned here in terms of improving myself, I've really been focused on, there's an old adage that says you write to think and you teach to learn. And so I've really started trying to journal a lot more to gain clarity, not just on myself, but also to improve my communication in the way that, just trying to organize and structure my thought process more appropriately to what it needs to be to connect with, these young athletes and the other people that I work with. And so I love reading too, and I've got a bunch of books and podcasts here that I listen to and YouTube channels, but I think, with this self-improvement arena, I think we do a lot of consumption. And I think, I read a book a week, just a couple of years ago, and, a lot of people do a lot of reading, and I still do too. But I think that we really, from at least on my end, I think it's important that we start to create a little bit more too, and not just consume consistently. And so that's actually one of the reasons, I ended up starting this company and business so that I just really felt strongly that, the more that I created, the more that I would improve. And this kind of goes back to that whole teach to learn idea. That's kind of what I've been doing here recently, some things that I've been thinking about to improve myself in the last year.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. We do. I suppose it's much easier, and we have to be. We don't have to be as vulnerable to learn stuff. We can take stuff on, we can learn stuff, we can, as you say, read books, we can do stuff like that. But actually to put it out there and help people with it is a much harder proposition, isn't it?
It is. And it's interesting too, because, I love this space, the whole self-improvement, this space, self-improvement. But a lot of the people that I talk to who have read a book, within the last week, I'll be like, hey, all right, tell me 3 or 4 of the most important things from the book. And they'll be like, they might be able to tell me one. And it's really interesting because we don't really, if you can't communicate, then you don't know. And so a lot of times we just are consuming this information and we're not taking the extra steps required to really continue to have that in our consciousness, if that makes sense. So, and I think that that's something that plagues the self-improvement space in general, that if I had to say anything, it's to, if you're going to consume, make sure you're writing those notes down. I ended up, when I took that year to read a book a week, I took notes throughout the whole book, and then I actually populated those into a big Google form that's now like, maybe 800 pages. So I can kind of go back and just remember and reflect. Because if we don't reflect, and we don't teach it, and it's not, we're going to lose it.
Yes. Yeah. No, I agree.
Thoughts there.
Sorry. Yeah. I have a tendency to read and immediately teach or certainly regurgitate verbally. For example, I remember doing an engagement workshop a few years ago where they kept pushing me to say exactly what I was going to talk about and to provide my slides and everything else. And in the end, I had to sort of really put my foot down and say, look, you're getting me along because I'm an employee engagement specialist, and I don't really know what I'm going to say in the moment, because it depends on what the people in the room are going to sort of throw at me as part of it. I see clearly there's some big stuff in there that's consistent, but actually I don't really know how it will go, and that's why you're paying me, which of course is a bit of an odd sort of sales pitch. But what made me laugh afterwards was I literally had read a book, and I was trying to think what the book was, and I think it could have been something like The Slight Edge, which is a book I absolutely love. But it whatever the book was anyway, I'd read it the week before the session, and I think half of the sort of 4-hour session ended up focusing on stories and things that had come out of this book, because it just fitted. I hadn't planned it, and I hadn't, for 1 minute thought that's what I was going to do, but it came up in a question somebody raised, which led to this whole discussion, which was all punctuated with all this stuff that had come out of this book. And it just made me laugh that, what you've just said, I take it in and then I sort of throw it back out again. But what I've never been very good at is structuring that. So I don't use pen and paper. I don't write notes in the same way. So I've just literally recently started to use the highlight option in Kindle a lot better than I used to, because I've had one of the old Kindles for ages, because I don't want the blue light, that affects your sleep. So I haven't been able to highlight stuff, but I have been able to on my iPad or on my phone. So I've had to have this structure of I only read business books on my phone, so I can't read them before I go to sleep. And fiction on my Kindle and all this sort of stuff. But now I've got a new Kindle that still doesn't have the blue light, but I can highlight stuff. And yesterday, in fact, I was on a plane and I was going through color coding the highlights from a book that I've just finished to make sure that I've got the whole lot in a document. And then my next thing was, well, where do I put it? so I haven't got there yet. I was thinking Evernote, but you can do it on I don't know if you ever use Goodreads. You can upload your notes from Kindle to Goodreads, apparently, but I don't know if I want everyone else to see my notes. So I've just recently thought, exactly what you said. I really need to get much more intentional, much more structured about capturing that stuff, because I am quite good at remembering things, but a story out of one book 3 years ago or whatever, and it's not really. And I also, people listening to the podcast will know I'm the person who goes, oh, there's that quote about, and I give the broad thought, but not the actual quote, because I can never remember any of it.
I've definitely been there. I feel you there.
So one of my highlights yesterday was a blue highlight means it's an actual quote with a person's name, and I just couldn't refer back to it, so it's quite funny. So lovely. So tell us more about, as I say, we were talking about learning, improving yourself, we talked about personal development. Tell us more about how you're helping your sports leaders, your athletes, to develop their own learning and leadership.
Yeah, certainly. So we have our kind of our starting point is the 6 tenets of leadership that we have, which is a really good framework that we, as we do the one-on-ones and we spend a couple weeks together, we can always go back to and reflect on as they're coming through different situations that they're struggling or having issues within their teams. And so real quickly, these are 6 tenets that I've come across throughout my time working with these athletes that they're just kind of completely missing the ball on, at least somewhere within these 6 tenets. So the first one is that everything rises and falls on leadership. It's a John Maxwell quote that I think is the perfect cornerstone for these athletes to understand, how important their role is, and and getting them to take ownership of the situations that they find themselves in. Because a lot of times they find excuses, or they kind of try to weasel their way out. But if we take this approach of extreme ownership, then we're far more likely to problem solve and make things happen than if we didn't. So I think that's something, that's our tenet number 1, is something that a lot of athletes, I feel like, is benefited from. Tenet number 2 is where we actually define it. So we talk about how leadership is influence. And so, like I mentioned before, how many athletes, they see leadership in a different light, and their coaching staff never really gets them on the same page. And so when, they think that leadership is one thing, maybe it's them yelling at their teammate for making a bad play. And their coach, the coach is on a completely different page. So our tenet number 2 just talks about how leadership is influence, and it gets them to really realign and rethink about the actions they're taking as a leader on their team, so that it's not just, being in front, giving the pregame speeches or anything else like that, but it's behind the scenes. It's the crucial conversations that occur to get somebody from not being bought in to bought in. So something like that. Tenet number 3 is this idea of self-expression, which is something from Warren Bennis, where he says that the essence of leadership is self-expression. So that's the idea of understanding who we are, what we want to do, what we want to accomplish, how to get there, our strengths and our weaknesses, just getting this full understanding of who we are. And then secondly, to be able to express that in a way that actually connects is a really difficult skill. And so, I won't get that. There's a lot that's packed in there, but I won't get into it too much. And then tenet 4 is just the fact that leadership is a choice. A lot of athletes think that this is just something that people are born with or not. And I think that the approach that this is a skill set that can be developed is going to take you a lot farther than if you think that you either have it or you don't. Because leadership are their actions. It's certain actions that you do and you take habitually and consistently that over time is going to, put you in a position and really be the building blocks you need to all of a sudden, 2 or 3 years down the line, you look back and you see how far you've grown because of the fact that you've chosen to lead on a consistent basis.
Yes.
Yeah. And tenet number 5 is just understanding that leadership is a service. And so 50-50, a lot of the athletes that I work with, they raise their hand to help lead their teams because they just want it to be on their resume. Something similar to that. So just getting them to realize that being in a leadership position means doing extra. And so it means, carrying the water cooler. It means, staying after practice. It's this idea and concept that if we're going to lead, we have to serve, and that you're always at the bottom there. Your team comes first, and then your teammates, and then you. And then finally, the last tenet is just the fact that leadership is an art. This term leadership has been a real buzzword in this, and over the last 50 years, it's probably been the most written on topic. And so there's a lot of people that have a lot of different opinions about what leadership is and a lot of different theories. But at the end of the day, it's really an art, and requires a lot of wisdom. And you just need to make sure that you don't become somebody who you're not. You kind of have this uniqueness to you that you need to leverage. And, so those are the 6 tenets that we usually go for. And then we have like different levels that we have level 1, level 2, level 3, where we go through and talk with them anything mental skills and managing emotions, to how to communicate and connect, to skill acquisition, to heuristics and biases and decision making and strategies. So we have this whole tier of levels that when we do the one-on-one services and the leadership academies, we kind of work and walk them through.
And what I really love about that as an employee engagement specialist is that those people, as you say, that end up with captain on their CV, with everything you're going through with them, it really isn't just something that's on their CV. It is actually, a a skill that they're developing and able to develop, which hopefully then feeds into the whole workplace, because there's so many people in leadership positions in organizations who haven't had any development, who think it's just a badge to get more money and don't believe it's about serving and it's an art and all those other things.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a skill set that again, I just feel strongly about. It's going to set them up for the rest of their life. You're developing future fathers, mothers, husbands, wives, and then, absolutely, with middle managers, executive directors, CEOs, all of that is, when skill sets are developed through experiences in sports, is this great experience that know that there's very little other things or many other things that athletes, young men, young women, are more engaged in and care more about than, playing sports. And so I just really feel strongly that if we leverage that, and you have a coach that can be there to kind of get you to reflect and to present some different models and allow you to think differently and have you question, some of your actions and different things, can really be an experience that, promotes a growth that continues to occur, that separates you from those that don't take this seriously. So.
Mm-hmm. And who buys you in? Is that good English? Who buys you in? That doesn't sound right, but I think that is right, but it doesn't sound right. Is it the coaches, the colleges and so on, or is it the parents, or is it both?
Yeah, so obviously the athletes don't pay; they don't have a job. So so it's usually the parents, and so that's where I've been really having an issue with is getting the parents to understand like why this is important, not just because they care about I know that they care about their child and their future, but they really want them. They spend a lot of money on can they hit a ball farther, or how hard can they throw a ball. So I've had a hard time really communicating to parents the importance of this. But yes, to answer your question, the parents pay for the one-on-one services, and then the leadership academies are something that the athletic directors purchase for their universities or college schools. Yeah. And we're in the process right now, which we're really excited about, because we're in an incubator, and we're actually developing a technology platform to help scale this to reach more athletes in a way that's never been done before. So we're super excited about that too. And for that, the athletes will be able to pay like a small subscription, like $4 or $5 a month, to have a customized like action plan that utilizes like machine learning and artificial intelligence and some really different cool things. So that's something that's in the works as well.
That sounds really exciting. I guess the other thing is that recognition that everyone's a leader in some shape or form.
Yeah.
Because I suppose to widen your market, you don't just want the team captain and the deputies or the aspiring. You want everyone, and actually everyone needs leadership skills, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's funny. Some of the research says that regardless if you think you're a leader or not, you are. And if we define leadership as influence, research points to the fact that each individual in a single day tries to influence at least 4 to 5 people. So, with leadership being influence, everybody is trying to, first, everybody has to be able to influence themselves. They have to be able to lead themselves. So all of these, the stuff that we're doing for team captains is for anybody in sports. The idea that, to be able to influence ourselves more effectively, with understanding how to be more mentally resilient, understanding how to learn, faster and quicker, or having the right character, increasing wisdom. All of these different things are something that each athlete could benefit from. And those athletes that do that best then can move into being able to then potentially influencing others. I agree. I'm glad you picked up on that, because a lot of people think that it's just for the team captains, that which is the service that we provide, but it's not just for the team captains. It's for athletes that want to be better leaders. So.
Yeah. So we're just coming to the end of the interview. I'm really interested to know what you do on those days where things go wrong, when you don't have such a good day, and when all your structured Google form planning doesn't work so well. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I tell you what, starting a business has been a total roller coaster. So unfortunately, most days they don't go right.
I see you've ruined my view of it now.
Yeah. So it's been, it's crazy too, because I've been pretty successful for the most part, but starting a business, there's a lot of failure that's involved. And so I really go back to a lot of things that I talk with my athletes with. And really quickly, there's 3 types of goals that I usually teach. There's outcome, process, and performance. And so I'm sure that you and your audience has probably heard of what the process is, but the process is the things. It's the present moment. It's the things that you can control, and just focusing in on those. If you start trying to think about, the future, or you start thinking on the past, it really just starts to create some anxiety, which doesn't help anything at all, because the only thing that you can affect is right here, the present moment, and then trying to influence what that future looks like. So for things when they usually do, when things don't go right appropriately, or if I have failed or didn't get a sale or whatever it might have been, it's staying consistent, taking ownership for the fact that it's not the other person's fault that they didn't buy, or something went wrong. It's on me. So I just kind of have to reflect, figure out how I can maybe better communicate or better influence that situation in the future. Do that reflection process quickly, through a journaling, and then just put that and include that into my process, and then just keep putting my head down and moving forward with the other things that need to be accomplished for that day. And so that would be my answer.
I think it's interesting that thing about you can't change what's happened and you can't do something about the future, you can only do the now, is so important in terms of getting overwhelmed or just worrying about things. I mean, I think I said before we started, I don't think I've said it particularly on the podcast, I've been away for a few days and I've got a lot that's sort of backed up, and that's fine because I had some time to do less stuff, and it was a good thing to do, so I don't do that often. But I have felt a few moments of overwhelm today, but I had to do exactly what you've just said, where I've thought, hang on a minute, everything's fine. Let's think, what's the thing you need to do right now? Forget the rest of it. What do you need to do right now? Get on the interview with Ben because he's going to be waiting for you otherwise. And that's fine. So at the moment, it's all very calm because I'm not worrying about the fact that I'm not doing other things at the moment, because this is the important thing. And then, when we've finished, I'll go and do something else, and that will be the most important thing at the time. And I think that's such a key skill and thing to know. That's really, not very sophisticated way of describing it, but if you can crack that, I think that really helps, doesn't it, to avoid that overwhelm and get you through those moments.
Yeah, and just to kind of put it back to in athletics, when we're focused fully on the outcome, a lot of things can go wrong. I think it's good to have a goal and a vision for what you want. But for instance, when I work with an athlete and he says that they want to win a national championship, it's like, okay, well, there's so many things that are outside of your control, which you might be able to influence some of them, but you can't directly control it. So we have to bring it back and put our focus 100% in on your process and what that looks like, because the process is what drives the results. And if you can have a better process than everybody else, and you focus in 100% on that, then you're going to be good to go. Because a lot of people will put 40% of their focus on the process or the present moment, and then 40% on the future and 20% on the past. So you're losing 60% focus there, because that's not helping you at all for the most part. Just some thoughts on that. So we're big fans of the process, and then trying to incorporate, and then we have a whole session that we really focus in on what is your process, how are you providing, how are you being strategical about that? Are you incorporating competitive advantages? All these different things that are pretty cool. But I know that's all kind of off topic here, maybe a little bit from your initial question, but.
It's making me laugh. I sent a message to little Dudley earlier. She's been at a netball tournament today, and I said, how did you get on? She said, became third in our pool. And then I didn't know what to say because I didn't know if that was good, bad, or whatever. So I replied and said, how do you feel? So she replied, good. Why? Obviously thinking. And I said, do you know if it was a good result or not? How many were there in your pool? And then she basically, was saying there was 7. It was fine. I was like, did you play well? She's like, last time we only won 1. So I'm thinking, oh my God, it's really good then. And then,
improvement's good.
And then she said, we had our hardest match first, which didn't help. So she, has analysed already and positioned and all that sort of stuff, which, it's probably a good start. But it did crack me up when she's like, good, why? Why are you asking me? I was like, I don't know what to say, do I? You might be traumatised for all I know. So last question.
Yeah.
What about those days where you know that you've lived more, and that's what I describe as being days where you get to do the things that you want to do and not the things that you feel you should do or you have to do? What does that day look like?
Well, I'll give you things. This is a great question. So in the morning, I would have done taken breakdancing classes, and then played 7-on-7 flag football. Then played a pickup basketball game. Played a board game like chess or Risk, and then played hide and seek with my 10-month-old. Maybe watch a TV show. No, that would be like a great day for me. But in more seriousness, I think that for me, creating something new is big. Something that helps solve other people's pain points and improves other people's lives. And then me personally improving in some way, and then definitely playing some sort of a competitive sport would be like would be a great day where I've definitely lived more if I can do those 4 things.
Lovely. And just to be clear, you're the first person who's ever said breakdancing.
And to be fair, I'm no good, but for whatever reason, that's been something I've really tried to figure out how you like spin on your back and do those cool tricks. So I'm no dancer, but I just really want to do that one day. So that's.
I have an image now.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, hide and seek with your 10-month-old is going to get much more athletic. I can't imagine that he's actually running away and hiding very much at the moment. It'll be just behind the hands, won't it?
Yeah, he just he'll crawl, and then like I'll run away from him, and then he'll come chase after me after I'm crawling, and then I'll peek around the corner, and then he runs away from me. So it's not so much running, but the crawling is definitely.
Yeah. So he's just coaching you gradually. He's just letting you get your sort of energy levels and your skill up, and
That's
right. Another 2 or 3 years time, you'll stand no chance.
Yeah, definitely.
Lovely, Ben. It's been great interviewing you. Please tell our audience where they can or how they can get in contact with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. That was a lot of fun. So www.captainscoach.com is our website. @captainscoach is Twitter. And then I'm on LinkedIn, Ben Smith, and love to, if anybody has any questions or wants to get in contact, that's probably the 3 best ways to do so.
Yeah, lovely. Thanks again. It's been really good.
Yeah, thanks, Joe.
All this information is available in the show notes if you just go to the link powertolivemore.com/ in this case 99, then you'll find those there. And the website that I shared last week on the newsletter is called Bookbub. And I thought I'd shared it already. I really love reading, and since I came across this website, my reading list has continued to grow, and I've discovered new authors that I wouldn't have found before. So it's basically a website where you register and tell it where you get your online books from, in my case Amazon, because I read on my Kindle, and then it emails you recommendations every day of either very cheap books or the ones that I buy or download, which are free books, either through Kindle Unlimited or otherwise. Quite a lot of authors have books that are free at the beginning of a series, and you read the first 1 or 2, obviously get into it, get hooked, and then the following books in the series are normal priced. So there's quite a few free books that are offered, as well as the Kindle Unlimited, and I've actually downloaded so many books now it's not funny. So I've discovered really lots of new authors and read many more books than I would have done if I was paying for them. Occasionally I buy a 99p book that I really want if one pops up. Quite often the business books are 99p, but it might be something like, I don't know, the one about the nudge unit that I bought recently. I'd been intending to read and hadn't got round to it, and then it popped up at 99p, so it was a bit of a no-brainer on the basis that I was already looking to invest in that at some stage anyway at the normal price, never mind the 99p. But in general, my free book rule rules. So if you want to find out about it, go to Bookbub, that's book and then BUB, bookbub.com. I've been banging on for a little while about the survey that I'm running for home-based consultants and coaches, and I had some problems with it a few weeks ago, so I've sort of kept it open for quite a bit longer than I'd originally intended. And I'm getting some great feedback on there as to what people really enjoy about working from home and what people don't like about working from home. And so if you haven't filled it out, or if you've got people that you know who are home-based consultants or coaches, I'd really love you to share that with them. And the link for that is powertolivemore.com/survey. And it really does just take 3 minutes to, probably even less than 3 minutes to fill in, and anyone who fills it in will have access to my book about how to organise your home office. So I really appreciate it if you can share that with your friends, colleagues, family, whoever who fit that criteria, home-based coaches and consultants. And the show notes again for this show are at powertolivemore.com/99. And we look forward to speaking to you next week with a really special show, because I am going to be interviewing Ellie, Little Doddsy, the co-presenter, or I think she might be interviewing me as well. I think we're going to have a chat and talk about our thoughts about the podcast up to now, and also our own advice around Power to Live More, so productivity, organisation, well-being, energy, resilience, and how you deal with things when you have a bad day, and how you live more, the sorts of things that we're doing to live more. So it's a special show because it's show 100. Who thought we'd get there? So I do encourage you to come back and listen next week. Okay, we'll catch you then.
Use your power to live more.